everyone. Thank you for to be here. It's a real pleasure to me to replace Luis Mora from UNFPA. I'm Jose Roberto Luna from UNFPA Guatemala Country Office, and I think it's really nice to hear about how roles, identities, that is another dimension and another level of the gender justice and change, is doing on the field, on the ground. And I think the experience that you will be sharing with us are so important to take into account how the role can be as an introduction to go in a more deeply and profound sense of the gender transformation. And I think it's really nice to share with us this space. We will be talking about how the impact and changes are going on around the roles, identities, and gender justice. We have here with 4 presenters that have lots of experience that we want to know. James Van Tricht, Julio Albino Langa, Zdan, I hope, Zdan Dusanik, sorry for pronunciation. Okay, thank you. And Valentina Utari. Sorry for pronunciation. Well, I am inviting you to do a presentation for 10 minutes each one, with your own presentation highlighting that you want to share with us about you. And then we will be open the discussion with people, because we have lots of experience here on the floor also that we can to share. So we will starting with James Van Tricht. Okay. James,
okay, thank you.
Your turn.
Yeah, I have to see, is it on here already somewhere?
Yeah.
Oh, where?
From beginning.
Yeah. 74. Yeah. So, okay, good afternoon. I'm glad that you're here. I must admit I'm really tired by now. Also because I've been working on the presentation even late at night and in the morning. Because as the title says already, it's about changing conceptions of boys and fathers in the Dutch society. But I must admit that the last few weeks since I wrote the abstract, actually the last few months, my own conceptions have been continuously changing. So also has the presentation been changing, and I'm afraid that it's even going to be changing during the presentation. So it will only be fixed when it's finished. I promised in my abstract to give some answers to some questions, some perspectives on the changing roles of boys and men, based on my experience with a few programs that we developed and implemented in the Netherlands. And I'll get to that later. Actually, the main change is that I thought I'm not going too long into that. I'm going to tell you some things about it, and then there is another topic actually that I would like to really focus on. A few weeks ago I was invited in the Netherlands. Interestingly enough, suddenly 2 times in 1 week, people wanted to have a lecture about the future of man and the man of the future, something like that. So I prepared my lecture, and then my first conclusion actually was, in the future there will be no more men. At least not as we conceive of them now, and there won't be any women either. There will be people of all kinds, and with all kinds of bodily functions, with all kinds of preferences, with all kinds of roles and tasks. But the whole concept that we think of masculinity, femininity, of men and women, in the future they will become obsolete. And then, just before I was going to give this presentation, I was walking around a bit, taking some fresh air, trying to deal with my nerves. Not here, but then I had an insight, and I thought, it has to do with, yes, you know what. First, this was what I wanted to say. I came to India 1 week before the symposium. I wanted to see a bit. I was here 15 years ago, and I learned about the Indian flag. the wheel in the middle is the wheel of Dharma, and I understood that this is the wheel of motion, the wheel of eternal change. So this is really the right place also to do my presentation about changing conceptions of boys and men, but also about the changes in myself and the changes that we're all working on. And I do believe that change is actually often also a big thing for people that they come to resist. And that's where this new picture comes in. I don't know if any of you knows what this is about, apart from the Dutch people in the room. Has anyone ever seen these images? Okay, well, the Dutch are not very well known for this, or badly known. This is what we call Black Piet, Zwarte Piet. It is an ancient racist colonial image of a black servant to a white bishop. It's our Santa Claus. We celebrate Santa Claus in a special way around the 5th of December. And almost since the abolishment of slavery, this bishop, Santa Claus, has gotten a black servant like this. So there is also a historic parallel. Now in the last few years, there's become a lot of protest from black and white and colored people in the Netherlands against the use of this image. So there is a whole movement saying it should change. Zwarte Piet there is petitions. Zwarte Piet is racist. There is law cases happening. Judges, politicians have to speak out about it. And at the same time, there's a lot of indigenous Dutch people really getting nervous about the changes happening. They say, no, it's not racist, it is our culture. And I love Zwarte Piet, and they have demonstrations. They don't want to go along with the change. And of course the change is inevitable. We can't go on having these racist images. We can only have them if we really deal with our history, with the injustices still coming from that, with institutional and daily racism. Well, what is the parallel with the changing conceptions of boys and men? It is that for me, I see the same kind of reactions amongst quite a lot of men, also in the Netherlands and in many other countries, against the abolishment of masculinity, of traditional manhood. And it is the same kind of fierceness, it is the same kind of heavy resistance against changes that are inevitable. The continuing change of life, of existence, and not that it's always getting better, but things will never remain the same. So now people are working on these kind of alternatives, and at least there is a big debate about it. And I could have a whole presentation just about Black Piet and what's going on there, also in masculinity, racism and gender in the Netherlands. But it's really getting the worst out of many people. As is, in my experience, the whole discussion about men and gender equality, which also brings out really bad things in many men, as we've heard, for example, from Michael Kimmel in one of his presentations. So, yeah, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. This is wise words of Rumi. And although I still wish to change the world, I learned that it's good to start with myself at least. And when I start looking at myself, I might, on the way, also influence others. At least it's not going to work if I say, others, you have to change, and I don't change, if I don't walk the talk. Some words about the projects that I was doing before. I studied women's studies for a long time. I was teaching about men and masculinity there. And then when I was finishing my study, I wanted to work with boys and men. So I got a grant to develop a method for working with boys in schools on masculinity and violence prevention. We called it Toffe Jongens. It's kind of nice guys. There's a history behind that, but I'm not going to talk too much about it. We used physical exercises, self-awareness tools, communication tools, and reflection on masculinity to help them channel their energy, to cope with problems in their lives, and well, to try to be better men, or to become better men. Then, at one point, someone asked, why are you not working with the fathers of these boys? And then, a few years later, we got an opportunity to develop a method working with fathers and teenage boys to strengthen their relationship and to get fathers more engaged in parenting. It's called Trotse Zonen, Trotse Vaders, which means a thing like proud sons, proud fathers. And again, we would work with fun activities, physical exercises, self-awareness, communication skills, and reflection on masculinity to broaden the scope of their idea, their concepts of masculinity. I'm also going to skip this. Then, almost at the same time, I was invited to participate in the organization and coordination of a series of university lectures about the boy problem in education. There is a problem with boys lagging behind girls, being demotivated, underachieving, dropping out of school. There is a lot of debate as to what is the causes of it, how big the problem actually is. So we invited people, experts from different places to talk about this. And just to make clear, I don't believe there is so much a problem with the feminization of education, as is often said in the Netherlands. I believe it's much more in the conceptions of masculinity that these boys are installed with and that they have to live up to. But I guess I'll come to that later. Because for me there was a conclusion after doing these 3 projects. I realized there is something really weird actually. I don't know if you've noticed, but the Toffe Jongens boys that I had on the picture, they were all migrant boys from the Netherlands. And once, when I wanted to apply for money for working on men, masculinity and violence, I could get money if I was working with these boys. Then we have the fathers and the sons, and we managed to have a mixture of target groups, because the sponsor wanted us to work with socially isolated groups, which were, in fact, I think for 80% in their program, there were migrant groups being worked with. It was empowerment work, but it's also stigmatizing in a way that they are the groups that should be worked with. And we managed to do 3 pilots with mixed groups, but it's not easy. I'm sketching the tendencies in the Netherlands. And then the weird thing, when we're talking about boys in education, and especially higher education, suddenly it's an almost all-white problem. So in the Netherlands, we seem to have, and I think it's not just in the Netherlands, we seem to have a schizophrenic idea about the problems around boys and men and masculinity. And then just go back to 5 years ago at the Rio Symposium. I was here with my colleague Jan, who's also here now. We were doing our poster presentation at the kitchen table. I don't know, any of you visited us there?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, cool. We called ourselves the kitchen table because we had a minister of emancipation, what's called gender equality in the Netherlands. He had declared women's emancipation is finished now. Women have all the equal rights. Men and women have to solve the remaining problems. Oh my God. Have to solve the remaining problems at the kitchen table. But of course the men wouldn't come to the kitchen table, so we invited them to the kitchen table. But he added one more thing after that, and he said, oh no, wait, we still have to do something for migrant women. We have to help migrant women because they are still seriously being oppressed. I have to end here. Actually, I'm not getting to what I wished to be doing, but I want to say that what I think is a risk in the work that we are doing, and I also, I'm afraid I also see it happening here at the symposium in some way, that looking from the Netherlands, looking from the West, it sometimes seems that we are telling people in the South, in the East, wherever, that they have to change their gender relations. And I think it is so important to look at the conceptions of boys and men and masculinity that we are having in the Netherlands, there where the power and the money resides. So what I wanted to do is go through images of Dutch men, friends of my Facebook, who are all having a non-Dutch background, and they are the real change in masculinity now. They are living the Dutch masculinity. They're of all backgrounds, they're of all ages, they're of all professions. And some of them are closer friends, others are just Facebook friends, I never met them. I'm sorry, I'm just running over time now, but I wanted to go through this. And actually I felt I want to honor these men for the life they live, for the work they do, for the very personal way in which they are dealing with the racism in the Netherlands, with being a migrant or an offspring of migrant, being not really at home or being alienated, not being always taken seriously. They are leading their own lives. They are being caring men in their own way. They are supporting our society, or their communities in our society. So preparing this presentation actually made me realize that I love these men very much, and I've not said such a thing very often in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We will continue with presentations, and if you want to do your questions or thinking about it, you can go. Right now, we'll continue with Jan. Dusani, it's your time.
Do you want to do it there or here? Or do you want to? Yeah.
Dobar dan svima, ja sam Srđan Dušanić. Good afternoon, everybody. So this previous words was on my language, on Serbian language. I'm coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina. For people maybe who are far away from my country, that's on the southeast Europe. That's one of the ex-republics of the Yugoslavia. I will present today one research. Actually, part of the images research. Maybe many of you heard for images research, mainly done by Instituto Pro Mundo in many countries, and we also did it in Bosnia. And as you know, in images research, usually we cover many topics, but here, of course, I will not present everything. In this research, I will focus on the fatherhood. So, main part of this research which I will present is actually based on the quantitative research, but after the quantitative research we also did one qualitative survey based on the interviews with fathers who show bigger commitment in their behavior and life. I'm employed on the Faculty of Philosophy. I'm professor of social psychology in my city in Banja Luka, but also I am member of the NGO Perpetuum Mobile, Center for Community and Youth Development, which was actually leading organization in this research in cooperation and support with CARE Northwest Balkan, and John Cranover, which is here, and Gary Barker from Instituto Pro Mundo. Okay, I will now start with presentation of the research. Here is a goal. As I said, we focused here to gather household survey data on men's attitudes and practices, along with women's opinion about men's practices on a wide variety of topics related to gender equality. But in this presentation, we will focus on results around household division of labor and men's participation in caregiving and as fathers. So in this quantitative research, biggest, mostly sample are men's, but also we included women, because we also want to figure out their attitudes about men's participation. Method, just couple short informations. Actually, sample in the quantitative research was quite complex. It was in the 56 municipalities. We collecting data on the random sample. You know, it's quite difficult to do it, but on some way we handle with that. It was a representative sample, and after that, as I already mentioned, we had like 20 interviews with committed fathers. I said who were the partners already. So let's see the main results, and I will start with the role of the man in household duties. Okay, this picture already is showing something on symbolic way, in which duties fathers are more involved, in which are females, women. So here we have men's and women's report about different, about participation of the men in the different duties. I don't want to read all these statistics, but we can see that actually in all statistics, men's perception is bigger than women's perception. That's expected, of course. And we can see that actually men are more involved in some activities which are on some way including money, like or like working in the house on, with kako se kaže zanatskim radnjama, in some craft works, like repair house, buy food, or pay bills. Other things, obviously, women are more, much more involved, like washing, cleaning, preparing food. What's happening? Okay. Just a sec. Sometimes that's working, but sometimes it is. Okay, this is like general opinion and attitudes toward men's involvement in satisfaction of men and women with division of household duties. We can see what men and women think about men working equally or more. Almost 61% of men thinking they are working equally or more, and less women thinking the same. And this is satisfaction with the division of household duties. Men are more satisfied. Why? Okay, this is statistics about men's present during the birth of last child. Actually, they are not satisfying results. We can see that actually in the hospital during the birth of last child, around 58% of men were present. The rest was somewhere outside, God knows where. Okay. Men's and women's report about men's accompaniment during the prenatal visits. So this is the what say men's and women. Did the man take parental leave during birth of his last child? We can see actually that big majority didn't take any leave, and around 23% take some leave. I think main cause is that in my country most of the men actually are not informed about that possibility to take also some leave during the birth of child. Okay, here are some general statements and attitudes about men's care of children. This is what men and women think about participating of men in daily care of child. 53% of men say yes, and less it's by women. And we can see how men are involved in playing with child from 0 till 5 years old. They are more involved, obviously, in playing, but much less in cooking and changing diapers. From GAM scale, which is much bigger, in the images research, I just took 3 items which are more related to fatherhood and actually relations toward the roles of males or females. So you can see percentage of how many men are partially or totally agree about these items. A woman's most important role is to take care of her home and cook. 52% say yes. Changing diapers, giving kids a bath and feeding, it's mother responsibility. 53. A man should have the final word about decisions in the home. 49. So we can see that actually half or even more than a half of men has quite present stereotypes about men's and women's roles in the family. I just want to also show you when we did a cluster analysis based on results on GAM scale. So we can see the three groups and how many percentage is in the category of men with least gender equitable attitude. That's 23%. 42 is with some average gender equitable attitudes, and 35 with greater gender equitable attitudes. So we try to go deep in these results through these qualitative research interviews. So here are the main results related to this topic. Most of the participants could consider it normal and logical to divide jobs because one person cannot complete everything alone. I will mention again that actually in this sample of qualitative survey, we actually had interviews just with that committed parents. So we want to actually analyze which factor influence that some fathers are just more committed to the family child care. So we identified through the interviews, analyzing interviews, 5 factors. First factor is early socialization. So they said they learned from the parents to work something in the home. Sometimes that's mediated that some of these our participants, they lose fathers in the war, so they stayed alone with the mothers. So of course that was a bad situation, and it was necessary to help mothers in that situation, and later they continue with bigger involvement when they become fathers. Or some of them they become early independent. They're going in the high school in another city, so they live alone. So there was actually a situation where they must work more alone, clean house. So that's one of the factors also. Second factor is wife influence. So just wife influence them to be involved more. A little bit pressure, yeah. Okay. Third factor, we're calling that cognitive awareness of men about the necessity of division of roles in the household. We can see some quotes here. One of the participants said, "I realized that it was impossible that one of us alone takes care of that amount of work. So we agree on how to share, and etc., etc." So cognitive awareness that it's not fair, like in this picture, which is obviously not fair. Better family relationships. Some parents, some fathers, they said they are more involved just because they see that situation in their family and whole life is much better. They have better quality relationships in global. And fifth reason is actually cleanliness and order in the house. So they figure out when they are more involved, actually it's better and more clean in the house. Okay, this is so necessary. So these are conclusions. I will not read them again. Actually, I already mentioned them, and my time is off. So thank you for attention, and later we can have more questions and debate. One of my friends like to say, like, shorter conversation prolonging friendship. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sofjan. We have on the table 3 main issues: changing roles, responsibilities, and identities. Don't forget that. We have been listening about changing conceptions of boys and parents, childcare in this research that was presented, the housework, and how the stereotype is still present, and how the woman's role is really, really necessary also to do the changes in the male life. So it's the time to know about caregiving and the experience of Indonesia. Valentina, it's your time.
Hi everyone. My name is Valentina Utari. My friend usually call me Utari. I'm from the Semeru Research Institute. This is a research institute focusing on social and economic research in Indonesia, based in Jakarta. But first of all, this study is my individual work, which is related, or I take this as part of my master thesis. And then on this study, I'd like to know how Indonesian males perceive their masculinities through caregiving activities. And what the study is about? This study aims to understand whether the notion of a man as a breadwinner is contested when 4 Indonesian males agree to temporarily migrate to Australia, accompanying their wives who got scholarship from the Australian government to do their PhD education or master or at the master level. And then I also like to explore more about their experience in perceiving their masculinities through childcare and household management activities. So as I mentioned previously that this based on my master thesis, actually I interviewed 12 people, 8 female students and then 4 husbands. So I only interviewed the husbands after the wives give me consent or after they agreed. So for this presentation, I would only show you the experience of the husbands. So they are all having different characteristics in the sense that they have different religions and then ethnicities, as well as different types of jobs. 3 are consultants. 1 used to be a lecturer but now become a business person. And then in order to understand their narratives, their rich explanation and stories, I am trying to use the gender discourses in contemporary Indonesia as a framework of explaining, in order to explain, you know, what happened or what they feel. Go back. So, there are dominated gender ideology in Indonesia, but I'm only using this state dominating gender ideology, which very much introduced by the new order era, and then it's centered on the nature of men and the nature of women. In relation to the nature of man, we know what we call bapakism. Bapak is an Indonesian term for father, and then bapakism is related with kodrat laki-laki. Kodrat means nature, laki-laki man. So kodrat laki-laki of the nature of man is income earning oriented, dynamic, extrovert and strategic. And this also means that you as a man have economy responsibilities. You have to be able to find money for your family, and it is your job or your role to help the women in the family to fulfill their potential. While the nature of women is having skills in managing a household, because women are primarily perceived as, first of all, sisters, mothers and wives. The word coined by in relation to kodrat perempuan is ibuism. Ibu is an Indonesian term for mother. Kodrat perempuan also defines a woman as someone who should be meek, passive, obedient to the male members of the family, sexually shy, self-sacrificing and nurturing. So using that gender discourses in contemporary Indonesia, the position of men in caring activities is a bit funny, let's say. So men's caring capacities are questioned because it's not prescribed in their kodrat laki-laki. So they are incapable of doing the caring, and there are also stereotyping around that if you do caring activities or household management, you may be called weak to your wife. We have a kind of joke that if you do all that sort of thing, you will call laki-laki takut istri, the man who's afraid of the wife. So that's the man. And then there is going on accusations about abusing the young children under the caring. So by using that framework, I'm trying to understand the narrative of the participants, and then it's a very huge and rich narrative. I use thematic analysis and coded the narratives into 4. The first one is duty as desire, a caring husband, a caring father. So all participants agree that this is their duty to show their care to the families. One of the participants, Aminuddin in this case, he even mentioned that it is him who encouraged his wife to go and study overseas. Because I also interviewed his wife. His wife said the same thing, that his wife at the first time was reluctant to go overseas, even though he has such qualification. But then when the husband, Aminuddin, said, you should go there or not, and then they just went out. So in this care, what I understand is that the desire to support their wives to study overseas is really related to the fact that caring is essential for the female spouses, for the wife to get the scholarship to go overseas. However, the duty and the desire clash at some point, because it's totally not easy for them to move to Australia and lose the possibility of work at the professional sector, because the visa that they got, the status of their visa is a dependent visa. By this dependent visa, they are not able to have professional jobs, so they only do casual jobs. As Indrawan mentioned here, it was like being in a zero, no families, no networks, and it was so difficult for him. So what I can say here is that they're trying to do a kind of reconstruction strategy in order to maintain their masculinities by taking casual jobs, because generating income is very essential for them. This is their duty as the head of a household. And then the third code is closing the gap. Why I put this important here? Because when they're overseas, this middle-class couple, I have to say that, they lost the luxury that they had once they were in Indonesia. In Indonesia, it is so easy and affordable to have domestic workers and also external support for doing the caring activities and also household management. But these two guys, representing other guys who mentioned that they're willing to do or to close the gap or support the wives in order to make the wife successful in the study. What I can say here is that the management of childcare and household chores is actually adjustable, and this also means that gender values is fluid. And then there is another code related to going home. Why I think it is important to present it here? Because they're not living for the rest of their life in Australia. They have to go back to Indonesia, go back to their office. And when they're going home, the pattern that they already created or developed in Australia is not continued. Why? Because they think it's just easier to find another domestic worker or use external support. And then because most of the participants live in Jakarta, it's just easier to have the nannies for their kids, for example. So the significant reconfiguration of gendered household arrangements becomes less significant here when the temporary migration period ends. So I conclude that yes, through the narratives of the participant, you can see that there is new configuration of gender aspects of life and identity. And while they are overseas, the male participants, they find that caring activities are their part of masculinity, and also breadwinning remains essential for them. So I'm really hoping to have this space to get inputs from all of you actually, because I want to give inputs to the higher education scholarship providers to give enough support for the couples who are going overseas for continuing their studies, because lots and lots of people are going there for continuing the study at higher level education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Valentina. It's really nice to hear experience and research about migration, because this is a phenomenon around the world and necessity for people division of labor was presented in this research, and how the context is really important to take into account when we are thinking about transformation of roles and identities and introducing as part of the gender equality. Is it time for Julia? Julia, it's your time. Don't forget, present to yourself, to the floor.
Well, after these fantastic presentations, I hope my presentation will be like a dessert to you. I'm just not sure how I'm going to give you a 65 slides dessert in 10 minutes. Yeah, but I'll do my best, and I will count on your generosity as well. This is the outline of my presentation. I'll give you a small background of the Men in the Kitchen program. I will explain to you, I will give you key features of the program, some of the components, and I will share with you also some of the key achievements so far, and obviously, and I think one of the most important parts, the conclusions and some lessons that we've been taking from this program. In terms of background, I come from OPEM, Men for Change Network, which is a network of about 25 member civil society organizations and human rights activists working in Mozambique, founded in 2009. And OPEM uses different strategies, different approaches to address issues of masculinity and gender equality. And that includes community mobilization, includes training of strategic partners, policy advocates, a bit of research, and media, etc. So in terms of the Men in the Kitchen, this program started in 2012, and the main objective, the overall goal of this program is to address unequal power relations between men and women as they expressed in division of labor between the two sexes. I'm sure you're all aware of the negative impacts of gender-based division of labor. Yesterday I heard one of our colleagues from India saying that, quoting a study according to which men spend between 10 and 15 times less time doing housework, and the reality wouldn't be the difference in Mozambique. It's quite similar, so I don't have to bring you the statistics. These are the specific objectives of this program: to engage men in housework by strengthening their cooking skills, their knowledge about hygiene, nutrition, agro-processing, to contribute for the prevention of violence against women, violence and discrimination against women broadly, as a result of unequal division of labor, and also to promote positive masculinity models. I have to say that we are not trying in this program to turn men into chefs like in a few sessions, That's not the objective, but the idea is to give them some tools, to share with them some tools that they can use as reference, that they can kind of develop, for their own benefit. And the Men in the Kitchen covers 3 provinces in southern Mozambique, and participants are mostly young and young adults under 35. So these are the main components of the Men in the Kitchen. It includes participatory sessions with use of a mobile kitchen, the one that you just saw on the first picture. And usually the sessions they can take 8 to 16 hours length, or 30 to 40 hours, depending on the specific village, depending on the kind of participants. And there are also follow-up sessions. We do follow-up sessions. The idea of these follow-up sessions is basically to support former participants, because after taking part in the program, sometimes when they go back home, when they go back to their communities, they have challenges, to use the knowledge and the skills that they learned in the program. So the idea of this support follow-up sessions is to kind of provide additional support to them. And there is also a media and outreach campaign that includes radio spots, TV discussions. We have a talk show on the national television of Mozambique, and some printed materials and obviously social media. There are also art-based activities in typical male entertainment places and monthly exhibitions at the Maputo Arts and Gastronomy Fair. So with this media and outreach campaign, basically we want to create a kind of supportive environment for these beneficiaries, but also to give visibility, to raise issues of equal sharing of responsibilities between men and women and the public, to influence the public opinion around those issues, to make it an issue, in the Mozambican society. And these are some of the topics that usually are included in the discussions: gender roles and power relations, masculinities, etc., etc. You could ask, why are we including issues of nutrition and agro-processing, for instance? But if you ask me that question, then I will realize that you've never been to the kitchen. But the issues of agro-processing is basically, we have a lot of local staff. One of the program principles is to undertake, is to be sustainable. Is to make sure that all the program activities, all the things that participants do during the program can be easily replicable at their respective context, at the respective communities. So agro-processing is a very important component to them, because it is through agro-processing that they can know how to deal with very specific ingredients, how to how to keep those ingredients, how to make full use of those ingredients, etc., etc., etc. And then these are some of the key achievements. We have had about 14,000 men participating in the program, and we have reached about 20,000 men through the media and outreach, and we have been able to engage in public discussions around these issues in the media, on equal sharing of responsibilities between men and women. And there's been a lot of reactions on social media, and there's been people calling to the media discussions to make their own contributions. And according to one of the evaluations that we did, 89% of former participants agreed that housework should be equally shared between women and men. But also 95% of them reported to have a better understanding of domestic violence, and they also say that they give top priority, they make use of dialogue in dealing with relationship challenges. 56% of them reported an increase in engagement in house chores. And there were also two documentaries produced by the Mozambican Filmmakers Association and also by the Norwegian Film School. And those documentaries, they bring some examples of former participants, some reports of former participants, about how they are making use of the knowledge and skills that they learned in the program. And if some of you are interested, I think the Norwegian film, the one from Norwegian Film School is available on internet. I can share with you the link after the presentation. And there is an ongoing process of including the Men in the Kitchen approach in full secondary school curriculums. But this is actually an experiment that we are doing together with the Minister of Education, so that we can see how far we can scale up this men in the kitchen approaches. These would be the typical examples of radio spots, former participants sharing their experiences, how do they feel after taking part in the program, how the program, what they gain from the program, etc., etc. And these are some of the important moments of the program since it started. The gentleman in the white t-shirt in the middle is the oldest participant that we have had so far. Is 64 years, and that is to say that it's never late, to learn these things. Let me go to the conclusions. We are in the process of collecting additional information on the impacts of the men in the kitchen over the sharing of responsibilities at household level and in changing power relations. But it seems to us that the combination of discussion sessions and learn by doing approaches can lead to positive change in perceptions and practices on gender roles and power relations. I have to say that this program is based on lessons from previous interventions that we did in Mozambique, and very often young people would challenge us. They would ask us, but you are telling us to do this, to do that, you are sharing with us this and that model. You say we should be gender equitable and all those things, but actually, we don't even know where to start from. When we go, even if we try to go to the kitchen or do some housework, people will make fun of us because we don't even know how to go about it. So that's why we actually, have been trying to give an emphasis to learn by doing perspectives. And also the use of engaging in concrete and easily replicable activities can be an effective way to address masculinity stereotypes. And integration of discussion sessions, outreach, and media activities has been fundamental to motivate change. It is a big challenge. You have participants attending the program, but then these participants, they are part of a community, they are part of families, they have groups of friends, they are part of other social spaces. So sometimes it is very important, to implement some activities to kind of influence those social spaces where the participants come from. And also, the program has been confirming some lessons from some other programs that we have been implementing in Mozambique. One of them is that transformation of masculinity concepts, stereotypes, and practices associated with unequal division of labor needs a self-reflective process by men themselves. It is important that men themselves engage in these reflections. It is important that they think about their own practices and attitudes. And also that, the fact that we have multiple views on masculinity among these young men is also an important opportunity for us, because there are many men who have never been exposed to any gender equality program, but they are very supportive to gender equality principles. They are very supportive to positive masculinities. So these are like opportunities for us, to give visibility to these men and make sure that they also influence the others. And one of the big challenges that we have is how do we sustain these beneficiaries' enthusiasm and change. I have to say that usually we advertise for the participants to take part in the program. We advertise in newspapers, in social media, etc., and sometimes we send invitations. And usually the sessions are fully booked because young people, they like very concrete, to do very concrete things and engaging things. So the challenge is how do we sustain this enthusiasm? How do we sustain the change, the level of change that they get from the program? Because they live in a context of cultural diversity, as they say, with multiple views of masculinity, and also they live in a context of structural inequality. So how do we deal with this challenge? Is it on time?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, about your presentations and your experience. I think it's very, very important to us to know different visions from different countries, from different places and regions. I was remembering listening to your presentations and reading your abstract about how many people are talking all the time about the roles as a specific way to address the gender justice, and we know that to talk about roles is not enough to transforming the gender stereotypes and to reach in a real way the gender justice, because it's an aspiration and we know that is. But I think it's really, really interesting to listen to you and your experience, and I think it's a first step to go directly. And I was remember how we need to take into account the hierarchy and domination system is part of this gender approach, and the intersection between gender, age, sexuality, and how in the societies is created, maintaining the social difference between these areas, the intersection, and how this intersectionality is creating the social meanings that are creating cultural meanings, and cultural meanings are creating cultural practices, and behind the cultural practices are the roles, the profound sense of social practices and identities, and the responsibilities are part of this complete picture, you know. I really want to introduce to you these points because I think it's important to talk about roles, because in the practice we are living day-to-day gender issues in our own lives, but I think we need to go forward. We need to go beyond about roles, and please, this is your time to do your questions or your opinions with the panel that have shared with us their perspective. So it's your time. We'll go to this side first and go there. Yeah. With the microphone for the record, please.
Thank you. I think that's a really valid point about the inflexibility of the language around gender roles, and how perhaps the language we use to describe gender roles and gender norms is much less flexible than the individuals concerned often. I want to speak or ask questions to Valentina and Julio in particular. Were you surprised by the degree of flexibility you found in your research project or your program, in the sense that, at least in Indonesia, Bapakism and patrilineal kinship and all sorts of religious and cultural ideas suggest that change in men is going to be difficult, it's going to be slow, it's going to be fought, it's going to be resisted, and perhaps there's similar narratives in Mozambique. And what you seem to have both found is that, hang on, absent cheap domestic labour, these men are able to vacuum, clean, cook, look after babies, and they'll do it perhaps uncomplainingly. And as you suggested, Julio, with some basic kitchen skills, perhaps these men will cook. And so suddenly these narratives of fixed, long-term, difficult-to-change ideas about men and masculinity seem to be quite vulnerable to radical shifts and change. So I guess the question in a nutshell is, were you surprised by the degree of flexibility in the informants and program participants in their gender roles or gender identities or gender spaces?
We will take some questions and comments first, and over here.
So, me, Govindan Thot from Nepal. We have also been working for women empowerment, and we have some main engagement component in our program. There is not my comments in your presentation. It was very excellent, and some components also with our program. People who are engaged in our program, main engagement initiatives, they are claimed to be westernizing the culture. People blame them that they are uprooting the notions of the religion, culture, and they are inspired by the Western culture. So in this way they blame us. So how to trust them, how to convince them, how to go ahead by convincing them. Thank you.
I didn't figure out what he was.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. The first person who asked questions started already a little bit in his question about the cooks, the men who are paid for cooking. That's what I want to ask to Julio as well. Although you have many discussions around your whole activities about gender inequality, etc. It's not only the fact that the men are cooking, but I don't know how it is in Mozambique, but you see in many countries, even in the Netherlands, then that whenever it's about cooking and making money, then it's always the man who's the cook. And the unpaid labor cooking in the house is the women. Playing the devil's advocate now, can't it be that these men and boys are so attracted to your activities because they think they can earn money afterwards with it? So wouldn't it be nice that you measure again after 1 year how many men really do cook in their household to support their wives, just to make sure that it's more than kind of
Social desirable answer.
Yeah.
This is Kapil from Nepal. My concern is that I am afraid after my query a little bit goes gender equality rather than men engaging. The point is that we people, Nepalese people, and surrounding other countries have got the same situations like India, Bangladesh, like other countries. We feel that women are discriminated, women are not getting the opportunity, women have not been recognized as a men because they don't have economic access, economic empowerment and livelihood. In comparison to this subcontinent, European, like I would like to ask Jens and other friends from Europe, that your women have got almost equal opportunities, they have got livelihood opportunities as well. Those the situation is improved, but you are just sharing the situations that still there is discrimination, and then women are not getting the opportunities like men. And you are talking about just you have presented several pictures, and then your PowerPoint over there, that you are just encouraging men for the child care and other nurturing other things. So do you have any kind of suggestion on the basis of your experience to the people like this subcontinent, Southeast Asia? What is your suggestion?
Here we are.
Hello, myself Madhu from India. To all of you, or specifically like a comment regarding Avithari's presentation, it's a more of the role, as you said already, as a gender role fluid and flexible and exchange. Like in my context, recent UP or in India, when a male migrates for occupation or something like that to city alone, he works all unpaid things like cooking, cleaning, and something like that because it's related to the survival. But when the whole family migrates, so it is the women laborer, his wife, or maybe mother or sister, mostly wife. They do those kind of things. So it's a kind of relationship, gender relationship. When it is, in your case, you said when the cheap labor is available, the role is not reversed in Jakarta. But in that case also, when the unpaid labor is available, as already said, commented by some of the audience also, when the unpaid labor is available, so they are going to take those patriarchal benefits. So it's a more kind of relationship, in which kind of relationship they offer.
The last one for this first moment. Okay.
Hi, my question is to Shrija. Did I pronounce your name correctly? You mentioned that men's presence during childbirth was dismal. Very dismal in percentage.
I think 50 and something more percentages was present, were present.
And one of the reasons you mentioned was that maybe there is lack of information that they can take up paternity leave. But I was just wondering that are there other gender factors that you analyzed while you made that that conclusion? That there could be other reasons as well aside from lack of knowledge. And for Valentina, Seiko did a research in Nepal, and we do other researches on masculinity. And one of the things that came out in Nepal, which resonates with your presentation, is that there is a lot of changes that migration and migratory trends bring in terms of shaping the way men or women think about, they behave in terms of masculinity. What I wanted to also share is that often while we look at only men and how it shapes their masculinity, it can also have an impact on women. Although I know that this presentation was about understanding more the role of men, but I just also wanted to bring that across because what we find in Nepal is there are some differences because what you're looking at is more Western migration to Western countries. And what we looked at in Nepal was migration to countries like Gulf countries and Malaysia, and the variables that we looked at was the communities that are more poor financially. But what happens to the women left behind is that they're usually thought of as very promiscuous by the other community members and the men of that community because of that absence of male household family member. And so they have a more reduced social status. Or even for women who migrate abroad, even for them, they are thought of as promiscuous because God knows who they must have slept with over there. Because the men weren't there to control them. So I think that's also something that maybe you could look at if you're also developing recommendations for the government agencies, that you don't miss out on women as a... Thank you.
Thank you for your questions and comments. Loved ones, right?
Thank you. Tyrone Ali, University of the West Indies. I have two quick questions, one to Valentina. I want to know if the men's input when they accompany their wives to Australia, if their input is based on financial or ideological reasons. In other words, if these men and these families had the finances, would they employ someone to do all the housework? Or are they doing it out of duty, out of caring, in spite of having the finances? And that way, it will inform your thesis if there's a financial factor, or if it's ideological and there's a shift to gender equality among these men wanting to do the housework. The second question I have for Dusanik, I'd like to find out if, because you put up interesting statistics and the reek of patriarchy in terms of men not taking leave, paternal leave to be with their wives and their newborn in large numbers, and also men having set ideas about the role of women. I want to know what is the social class of these men that you research. Is it a middle class, or is it across all classes? And if it is across all classes, is there predominance of a sentiment among the working class that this is women's role, or is it shared? And that way we get an indication of the shift to gender equality in Bosnia. Thank you.
I felt that one 3 times. Right now, the last one here.
Is there a next round as well?
Let it go. Let it go.
Then I'm asking the last one.
It's your time right now. About flexibility.
Yeah, thanks for very interesting presentations and very good insights. Those are coming out of. I have a few questions to 3 of you, not to Jan. I'll start with Valentina. Have you also looked into, because the way the study that you have done is very interesting, and there has been a number of ethnographic studies done about men who migrate to foreign countries. Have you also looked at the level of violence, intimate partner violence within that relationship? Because the way you are describing was there is some level of so-called crisis of masculinities as well, where a lot of times that crisis is sort of met by the use of violence or using more violent behavior with family and children. So have you looked at that aspect as well and how that influences your studies as well? And to the Sonic, this one interesting point in your presentation was on the report of men and the reporting of women, especially in childcare and playing and changing diapers. In rest, it was men reporting higher, whereas women were there and reporting lower. But in these two cases, it was men's reporting was lower than women's. That's quite interesting.
Yes.
Whereas it's often in the images study that has been done so far, it's still the same. Men reporting higher and women reporting lower. So why was that sort of a change, which is quite surprising to us?
Yes.
That is very interesting thing. To Julio about kitchen. So kitchen is an interesting space for me, and I am still learning about this. Sorry if I sort of misunderstand your points. But kitchen is for me a very interesting point in the sense that so far that has been the space for a lot of women and our female colleagues where they enjoy their power. Right? This is the only space where they most enjoy their power. And then now we are bringing men suddenly into the kitchen without really looking into the sort of internalization and critical reflection of the power dynamics that men carry, even in terms of cooking in the kitchen. Aren't we even overselling the power space that women used to have? And I think for me, what really matters is what is this interaction and the internalization process, a critical reflection among men about not really going for kitchen, but sort of not as a supporting role, but as a shared, sort of having that kind of shift in the ideology, which really matters. Have you looked into that, and what is the response in that aspect?
It's your time. It's the final time.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Okay.
You start with Valentina, that was the first.
Lots of questions here. So, I just want to make a confirmation about the first question. Is it, were I surprised to see the inflexibility or flexibility? In the flexibility. Yes, I was surprised with the flexibility. And then I was also surprised that actually I didn't put it in my presentation, that one participant, one male participant, he dropped his lecturing job and then totally changed. To me it's really surprising because I visited them and then I saw how they interact with each other and also with the kids. And he now become a stay-home dad. He's the one who rule the house, let's say, do all the household management. He's doing the petty cares as well, and not the wife. It's completely ununderstandable for me when I first visited them. And then, but it's also inflexible to some cases, because when it comes to male students, I think it's also responding to the second question, when they move overseas, the wives would drop their jobs in Indonesia and then went with the husband to Australia and become stay-home mom. So how to put it in a situation, I don't know. So in one case, yes, it is flexible, but in other case, it's inflexible. And then about the male migrants and how to see the gender relationship, yes, in the bigger paper I look into that. And it's true that when there are also cases when the wives move to study overseas and the husband do not want to go with them because they still have the career back in the country. all the caring activities are left under the responsibilities of their mother-in-laws usually, or the mothers. So the dads in Indonesia is still, I don't know, maybe they're still concentrating on the breadwinner values. And then in relation to this, the third question from Nepal, there are lots of research actually about migrant women from the low economic level, and my research institute also did one related to children affected by migrations of their mothers. And then that's also why I think, because this area is a bit, in my opinion, understudied, I choose to research the perspective of masculinities and also femininities, because in the bigger paper I also talk about the female students, about the wives of the male participant that I interviewed. And then whether the man input is based on financial or ideological stuff, I think first of all it's based on psychological pressure, because the wives, it always started with the wives getting cranky of doing all the study, and then when they arrive home, the house is just like a disaster. And what's the point of having the husband migrating with them, accompanying them and support the study, but doing nothing? And then it becomes also financially based on the financial stuff, because it's very, very expensive to have domestic working in Australia. Although it's true that the husband said it's so easy to do all these household chores in Australia because we have the vacuum cleaners, we have the machines, and the electricity is always on. Not in Indonesia, it's always off and on. And then I see one person give his input based on his ideology. And it's quite surprising to me, because he's the only one out of 4 participants who has madrasah educational background, so from the Islamic boarding school, which I thought would be quite conservative. And he's the one who changed his job. Now he became the stay-home dad. And then did I also look into the intimate partner violence for the study? I didn't put it in my paper, but yes, I observed it even in the conversation with the female participants. It was really emotional, like the verbal abuse is here and there was there. Like, for example, remember the participant that who said that it is like being in a zero conditions, moving without families, without networking. The wife mentioned that when she asked him for the first time to take the kids to the daycare and also to feed the son, the answer is, it's your job, you're the woman, you're the mother, it should be you who do it. And then neglection also there. Unfortunately, I couldn't interview the husband of these female students. So the case is that both studying PhD, and then she just did everything, the cooking and all that stuff, and then she got the scholarship first, and the husband a couple of months after that. But her husband finished the PhD study long before the wife. And the funny thing to me, this female student asked me, what's wrong with me? Am I becoming dumb after delivering 2 babies while I was overseas? But it's true that it's because she just exhausted of doing all that stuff. So I think that's my response. Thanks.
Maybe in order to the number of questions, Julio, it's your time, and then with John.
Thank you very much for your... Is it on?
No, it's not.
Thank you very much for your questions. I think, last year I wrote a small article that was called Men in the Kitchen and Women in Politics. And, you know, with this article, basically, I was trying to question the way the labor is, allocated, the way the professions, the way the different spaces are allocated to men and women in our society. And I was also reflecting a little bit about how sometimes even violence against women can be justified because women did not perform very well, you know, like in the kitchen, you know, in doing the house chores. So for me, there are many other negatives. There are many other negatives, lots of negative impacts that result from this kind of division of labor. I agree that, in fact, sometimes the kitchen is one of the only spaces that where women can actually express themselves and express their thoughts, express their feelings. But we have to consider that it is also in the kitchen where often day of overburden starts. You know, most of day of overburden comes from the kitchen, and you know, starts in the kitchen and ends in the kitchen. In most of our communities, you know, they usually start their day in the kitchen and then they finish their day in the kitchen. So the basic idea that we want with this program is not specifically to just put men in the kitchen, but to challenge the division, you know, this unequal division. It's not just to have men cooking, but it's also to have them engaging in house chores. You know, we're just using the kitchen as an entry point because usually, you know, young men, they find it attractive. It's kind of difficult sometimes to have them, like I said, just sitting and reflecting, you know, talking about things, discussing about things. We need to give them something concrete to do, and that's one of the things that we've been trying in all of our programs. You know, give them concrete things, very concrete message, something to do, not just, you know, reflecting, but something very concrete. So I want you to think that it's not just about putting men in the kitchen, but it's like using the kitchen as the door, you know, that men, through which men will enter this, you know, bigger space of house chores. I think definitely there is a need to undertake more evaluation. You know, there is a need for us to do a lot more assessments, impact assessments, and all these things. I totally agree with you. And we also acknowledge that in this work there are some risks. And the fact that some men would come not really because they are interested to share responsibilities at household level, you know, it's a risk that we have to deal with. And that's why we do a lot of these follow-up sessions, because it is through the follow-up sessions, it's one of the ways that we found to kind of see where they are going, you know, to kind of see what are they actually doing, you know, after taking part in the program, to kind of see what are the ways, you know, in what ways they are using their knowledge, in what ways they are using their skills, and what challenges they actually have. And that is also why we have this strong component, you know, of like reflections in gender equality, you know. And I'm giving, I mentioned gender-based violence, you know, as one of the topics, but you know, in general, we also include other topics related to gender equality, because you know, that is one of the ways to make them understand the different dynamics, you know, of these issues. And I have to say that I was not personally surprised with their flexibility, you know, in roles, because I think we have a lot of diversity, and we need to make use of this diversity. Men are not in the same, like they are not all the same. They are not in the same we cannot place them in the same category. You know, there are different types of men from different classes, from different contexts, from different professions, and I was not surprised with the fact that many of them would actually be flexible, you know, around these roles. Some of them even, you know, we're so happy to find an opportunity to actually express things that otherwise they would never be able to express. You know, there are some men who are actually, they're already chefs, but they come to the program because, you know, they are stigmatized sometimes because they cook, you know, they cook in functions, when there are functions in the communities, they cook, you know, when sometimes they cook at home and they are made fun of, you know. So when they came to the program, that was also an opportunity for them to find other men, you know, where they could, you know, they could share their feelings and their thoughts, the challenges that they have. That was like a space for them to express themselves. You know, that was like a supportive space for them. And this is one of the things that we also want, to create these spaces where men can actually come and reflect and think about their own, you know, challenges, about their own realities. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarjan? Thank you. So I had a couple questions.
If we can be briefly.
Yeah.
We have
I will say a couple comments, and I just want to add to this issue related to cooking. If something and how to actually maybe more influence young men and men to be more involved in some household duties like cooking. If something is creative in household duties, that's cooking, and I think we should use that fact and present cooking like a challenge. I like to cook. If I'm stressed, nervous, just put me in the kitchen, and that's best stress management for myself. And I like to play with the food, preparing different food from all sides of the world, and usually all my family is quite happy and friends with that, and my wife can confirm that. So maybe to use that when we want to influence kids, to present that on just like a challenge and something that is really creative, and what can be later, let's say, value in your peer group, and not just family. Okay, couple questions about social context of my research. Yes, some data and are a little bit pessimistic about, especially that with about gender attitudes. I will mention that the data is the research is based on the random and representative sample, which of course make us more worried based on that fact. But when we're talking about these stereotypes, are there which parents are more present during the childbirth, and that we found a couple of significant correlations with the ages and with the education. So usually younger fathers and more educated fathers are more involved in the child care and other household duties. Yes, it's interesting data. I don't have really some logical explanation why percentages of the women are bigger than men's percentages about men's involvement in child care. Actually, percentages, they are not so different. My first thought was maybe actually they feel that men are not helping them, but when that happens, finally they are so happy that they think it more often than okay, that maybe show briefly.
Yeah. So thank you. It's a pity we have no more time. I think it's very interesting, and there was a lot of interesting questions that I'll try to address some. Coming back to what I put as a central topic, I think it's very much about change, and I was very happy with Valentina's example of the stay-home dad. I believe that, well, speaking for the Netherlands, but I think this is somehow also a worldwide development now. we're getting for the first time in history in a period where boys and men can be free from the specific roles they had to perform before. So it becomes a choice maybe now to be a stay-at-home dad, or to be more involved with your children, or to be in the kitchen. And I think this is a positive thing, even though not all change is per definition only positive, and there's always side effects to it. But I think it's good to embrace the change that's happening and to turn it in the direction where we would like it to be. And then, of course, I've been pointing out the racist, colonial, neo-colonial, imperialist, whatever connotations that are sometimes or often even attached to the Western influence in these change processes. And I really do believe that it's important to look at a grassroots level what change you need and wish in your communities, and where you are, and what is the needs that you are working for. And I also see that sometimes, also in the Netherlands, the criticism of the Western world can also be used as a way to oppose the change that's happening anyway. So I think it's good to be aware of both. But for donors and partners from the West, I think this is really something to be aware of and be critical about, because we cannot be imposing the things to the rest of the world that we are not really working on very hard in our own countries. Then some things that I heard also in the other discussion, I think it is very much about the script that we're living in. For me, feminism is not just about getting more women in higher positions. It's about rewriting the script. It's not just about other positions or changing roles within the same bad movie, actually. So that would mean also really a change in the valuation of, for example, household chores, care labor, all the things that women have been traditionally doing. As long as they are unpaid work, there will be an equality. And what is happening with the externalization of such work to, for example, external housekeepers or cleaners in the Netherlands, is that it's being feminized labor again, but also in the Netherlands at least, it will come to migrant men doing these jobs. So these migrant men are also being feminized in their labor positions. So basically, I think that's what I wanted to say. For me, I want to stretch that again. I think the whole gender equality movement, feminism, is about the liberation of maybe women, but also very much about femininity, and also the femininity in men. So I really think we should celebrate the growing freedom for men to embrace this side of their human potential, but also to step into these places in the world. And I do very much agree with Laxman that we cannot just storm into women's places and say, now we take over and we'll do it our way, because we should be more sensitive than that. Yeah. Thank you for that remark.
Thank you. And thank you for the panel, both for their experience and their knowledge. Thanks to you. We have a long way to walk, and experience about the role. It's interesting also to transform other ways in deeply other ways to transform gender justice. We have challenges, but we can know about opportunities and creativity. And I just say to you, we have to believe in the human condition to be good and believe in social transformation. Role is part of that. Thank you, everyone, for to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for moderating. Great.
Sorry for coming. I am replacing.